Hello, friends, Inner Circle fam. Thank you for joining today. I'm your host, StatATL. Today, we're going to be talking some best ball strategy. We're going to rip some drafts here in the Mitten and the Gauntlet. And we're going to take your user-submitted questions here in the chat. So I've got a Mitten draft, just fired it up. And so let's go live here. Got the 3-hole here. And as we've kind of talked about on previous shows, ADP has kind of shifted over the last few weeks, generally seeing Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts go 1, 2, 3, with Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff kind of rounding out those top 5 quarterbacks, generally all 5 of them going in the first 2 rounds. So really important as you kind of talk through and build out your roster, kind of being conscious of that. You know, as we've talked about on previous streams, as we go through the first probably 3 rounds, really want a goal of trying to, grab either 3 players from the same team or 2 players from the same team and a player from the opposing conference as we try to stack out for a Super Bowl matchup. I think pretty similarly. So we're actually going to start here with Derrick Henry, do something a little bit different. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson go 1, 2. So, I think a common mistake that we see from drafters, very similar to daily fantasy, is, playoff best ball isn't a game of picking the best players. Some of the really big edge in best ball is really kind of paying attention to the draft board, and your lineup construction is so critical. As we've talked about previous days, you will see more and more rosters in these drafts. Typically, we see 1 to 2 teams every draft that are completely dead, that can't field a team in the final. So kind of just one of those things to pay attention to as you move forward in these drafts is just kind of seeing what the field is giving us here in these drafts, and kind of thinking through what your build means to you, to what are you saying in your draft. So to me here, I could go a couple different ways here. I think I'm going to grab Jameson Williams here. Probably build out a little bit of a weaker Baltimore-Detroit stack here. Would expect Cook and Flowers to go in these next 4 picks. Probably the Josh Allen guy taking James Cook, and Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones taking an NFC player, and Lamar Jackson grabbing Zay Flowers, and then likely an NFC pick as well. If you've got any questions, throw them here in the chat. Or, if you think the music is too loud, this is actually my first show doing it with music. Please let me know in the chat if you think that it's too loud. So Lamar Jackson drafted actually takes Patrick Mahomes. So obviously, maybe not obviously, but that is a critical mistake, taking 2 quarterbacks in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds. Just really a waste of draft capital. You will see pretty frequently, along with just bad drafters, you will see people be frustrated and just, take what I would call revenge drafting, where they'll purposefully try to block with taking a second quarterback or trying to snipe you. And to me, the best way to move on from that is just to realize that there while they are slightly hurting your team, they're also really hurting their own team. So, that's just kind of one of the things that you have to be willing to deal with as you're doing these drafts. So, as you see here, the two-hole Scioto, who is a red badge, clearly just a really poor draft. His draft is completely dead with 3 quarterbacks through 3 rounds. Doesn't necessarily mean that our draft is dead. I'm going to try to pivot here. I'm going to grab Aaron Jones, kind of with the thought of potentially trying to grab Sam Darnold on the way back. Again, one of the challenges with both streaming and talking through while you do this is that you're really trying to think on your feet. So, as we've talked about over at 1 Week Season, not every draft that you do can be a winner. So, Clinton here has gone and grabbed Sam Darnold. So, this is a really great example of where I'm going to have to really do my best to think on my feet here. Again, with this 2-hole being honestly a really horrific drafter. Not something that I would advise in your future drafts. So I know this is going to appear to be a mistake, but I have a plan in mind. So I'm going to go here and grab Jordan Addison just to kind of shore up here a Minnesota build. And then we will try to build from the AFC. So Peter Juice asks, how do I populate the screen on the left? So for you've got this box here, which allows you to open up the grid format, and then you can make that box kind of full screen and then just kind of toggle between the two. That's generally how I like to approach it. To me, this is easy visually for me to be able to follow along, and I think for you as an end user and a viewer here, I think it makes it easy for you to be able to follow along as well. So I see 186 of you watching live today. Appreciate you tuning in. If you've got any questions, please throw them in the chat. I know a lot of you know me from my work over at 1 Week Season and my Bestball and daily fantasy content. Have done some work with Tyler, Totag, and Tambo over with kind of the Ship It stuff, as well as his own project over at the DFS Mastermind. I've done some stuff in the past with Neil Orfield talking playoff best ball and the weekly winners last year, and the strategy that we kind of put into play, proved to be successful last year. On the weekly winners side, Neil actually won a week, and I came in third using the strategy we put into play. So I will link that in the description if you want to check that video out at a future time. But last year we did some underdog specific strategy, as we are doing again this year, and was fortunate enough to take down the flagship contest on Underdog last year. And so I feel like this is a product, a game that is getting more and more popular, and would love to see it continue to gain audience. So really appreciate the 200 plus of you who have joined in watching live here. So as you're seeing, the 1 seed here, the 1 hole here has gone Josh Allen, James Cook, Amari Cooper. He's then also trying to pivot between Josh Jacobs and Mike Evans. We'll probably build out multiple ways to go there. I am going to grab J.K. Dobbins here. Again, not the most likely outcome, but trying to pivot a bit here from some revenge hate drafting out of the 2 hole here with Scioto, whose team is obviously dead. If we look here at the 4 hole, we've got OCD, building out Detroit, Baltimore. However, both of those quarterbacks are off the board, so going to be very challenging for him from there. 5-hole here started Barkley, Jefferson, Darnold. So he's got a Minnesota, and then he's got Worthy in Kansas City. So probably working on those two teams there in the final in the Super Bowl there. Don't mind that. Again, everybody, the three of us between 3, 4, 5 holes all having to pivot. Free spot for wild card weekend. Well, potentially. Obviously the 2-hole team is dead to win the contest, but could potentially advance. I mean, unlikely, but potentially. He's not dead for that. So just because other teams need quarterbacks, I'm going to come grab Herbert a little early here just to make sure that I'm not completely dead with a team. Let me see. Do I think that Underdog will cancel the draft because of how the 2-hole drafted? Hard to say. He's taking all guys who, typically go in those rounds. Lamar is typically a first-round pick. Patrick Mahomes, typically a first or second-round pick. Goff, a second, third-round pick. I would say probably not, to be honest. There's clearly no collusion. He's not helping anybody by his drafting. He's just candidly drafting like an idiot. Just my 2 cents on that. So, again, not every draft you do is going to have the possibility of being a winner. So when you get into a situation like this, it's really beneficial. It helps you kind of think on your feet. And obviously, as we teach over at 1 Week Season, I've been a big proponent in my own stuff. Your goal is never to just try to min cash, but sometimes you have to realize that this is an unlikely roster for you to be able to win. I've got this built in a way with the Chargers and the Vikings right now where this could win. If that, got to the Super Bowl, I could field a viable team. Just kind of one that is unlikely. So considering here either building out a Pittsburgh stack to go along with what I've got for the Chargers. Again, very unlikely that this would cash. Consider grabbing David Montgomery there at 46 instead of Pickens. Again, I am, with this build, just specifically trying to advance it out of the first round. And with Montgomery getting, having that first round bye, I didn't think that would help the chances on that. So I went away from Montgomery, went Pickens, and we'll probably build out here a Pittsburgh kind of secondary build here to go along with LA. Likely to kind of pair with Minnesota in a potential Super Bowl. But again, a very unlikely roster to have a strong finish. But as I mentioned, they can't all be winners. So just kind of being able to think on your feet and giving yourself the best opportunity is really all that you can ask for here. So I'm going to come here and grab Russell Wilson to pair with Pickens. And then in the 10th round, I will probably grab either Jaylen Warren or Najee Harris to kind of pair with both of those, give myself 2 viable Super Bowl matchups. Likely have either 8 or 9 active players in the first round, so a reasonable chance to get out of the first round and min cash. And again, certainly not the goal of what we're going for, but just giving yourself the opportunity to min cash, build that ROI, build your expected value, over the course of this contest. That's assuming, again, that you are building, drafting more than 1 or 2 drafts. Obviously, If I was building one or two, maybe I would have played this slightly different. But that, again, I've got a portfolio of I think 100 or 200 drafts at this point. So that's kind of how I am approaching it. So if you're interested in joining, I will probably fire up another. Actually, let's switch and we'll do another draft here in just a minute. Let me complete this one. Look at my squad here. Won't talk through all of the squads, but we'll look here at the one hole. He was able to. Let me just queue up these guys, and then I don't really care. One hole was able to go Josh Allen, James Cook, Amari Cooper, Kincaid. So he built out a Buffalo stack and gave himself the option of both Green Bay with Jacobs, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, and then Tampa with Evans and McMillan. So not a bad build from him there in the one hole. Two hole, we've already talked about his team. Obviously not something I'm a fan of. We've talked through my team. Let's look at the four hole. He ended up grabbing Stafford to go along with Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams. And he could build a Rams Flowers Andrews. So he could build a Rams Ravens stack with Likely. So he ended up getting to an unlikely Super Bowl build as well, but able to think on his feet. The five hole here went Barkley, Jefferson, Darnold. So built out, and then I think he grabbed Hawkinson. So he was able to grab both the Vikings. And he got Terry McLaurin. So probably Vikings KC is his best bet here. A little bit thin, but not horrendous. So let's come in here and let's fire away with a gauntlet draft here. So we'll close this out, and we're waiting on one more person to fill this draft. When it does, I will populate the building. Assuming going 5 running backs is fairly uncommon and just draft specific. Here, yeah, I mean, certainly not ideal. Looking to, sorry, let me get that comment up on the screen for everyone. So Kiss asked, assuming going 5 running backs, fairly uncommon, just draft specific here. Yeah, I mean, just kind of trying to think on my feet, working to do my best to build a roster that could get out of the first round. Yeah, so let me come back over here and just kind of show, scroll up. So Peter Pimchus had asked, so again, as you open up the room, you come over here and then just kind of open this window, and I am just kind of sizing it here to kind of fit to the screen. So we are in a gauntlet draft here. Drew the one hole, one other badge in the 2 hole with Will Make War. And I think from here, just kind of the highest expected value play is just to grab Josh Allen. So we will do that and see what the rest of the board presents to us. So, you asked a specific question, Kiss Al, about running backs. Generally try to limit that to 2 or 3. I think 4 on a very rare occasion. If I am building 2 bye teams, so the 2 1 seeds, which right now are Kansas City, and then obviously a 50-50 toss-up between Detroit or Minnesota. If I was building 2 of those and, let's say that it was Detroit, let's say I was building it for Minnesota to get the bye, and I drafted, Aaron Jones and Isaiah Pacheco, I might consider 2 other running backs because at that point I am trying to build a team that is, threading a really thin needle to get out of the first round. If you're drafting 2 1 seeds, you're essentially playing shorthanded in the first round with only 5 active players. And you have to be one of 2 out of the 6 teams in your pod to advance out of the first round. So it can be done. It is a little on the difficult side, but not impossible. And it's something kind of a more unique approach just because of how difficult it is. You don't see as many teams doing it as candidly I think you should. Just because if you look back at the historical data, the 2-1 seeds, are the most likely teams to advance out of the first round. Curious how I'm going to build an Allen's deck. So for me, there's kind of 3 different ways you can kind of go here, Pete. You could go James Cook, which is what I'm going to do here when he's available, and then grab an NFC piece. Devonta Smith, Jamison Williams on this board, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, all viable options on this board. I will probably go Josh Jacobs on this board. Obviously, if Justin Jefferson was available, I would have grabbed him there. I also would have considered if Justin Jefferson was there, going Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones is an interesting build. Had Amon-Ra St. Brown slipped, I probably would have gone Amon-Ra, potentially Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams, and to kind of build out a Buffalo versus Detroit build. For me, I just try to come in sort of with a plan. I guess I should take that back. I generally don't have a plan. I've done enough of these drafts where I feel strongly about, knowing current ADPs where guys are likely to fall. And to me, kind of one of the most important things is kind of not specifically having a plan, but taking what the room gives you. It will be specific room to room. But one of the things that I think not enough drafters do is kind of paying attention to what their other draftees, what the other 5 people in the room are doing, because it's super important. Specifically, when you're more in the middle, not on the ends. It's not as important on the ends, but when you're on the middle, let's say you're in the 2-3 hole over here, one of these 2 spots, kind of knowing what the guys in the 1 or the 2, if you're in the 3 hole, are likely to do on that turn, kind of increasing your odds of who's likely to come back to you if you're kind of torn between 2 ways of going. So Pete asked that, how many teams do you typically see dead because of bad drafting? I've seen 2 or 3 right out of the gate without having enough coverage for either round 1 or the Super Bowl. I would say on average, it's probably 1 to 2. I have seen drafts with one that we did live on stream, I think 2 or 3 days ago, had 4 dead teams that couldn't field a 5-player Super Bowl. So we'll consider Shakir here. Kind of debating if I want to build a second stack or a second potential build out here. Probably. I'm going to come here and grab Mike Evans and build this out with Buffalo and Green Bay and Tampa Bay as my potential NFC options. Likely not teams that will be blocked in this build. And the thing with Buffalo, they are just so spread out that, to me, a big mistake that you commonly see from the one hole is taking Josh Allen and then taking 5 6 Buffalo Bills pieces. It's just, to me, I think that that's such a big mistake, just because if you go look at box scores, for Bills players, it's just so rare for many of them to give you 15-point, 20-point scores. It's so rare that it happens. Most of the offense flows through Josh Allen or James Cook, and occasionally you'll have a pass catcher come along with them, whether it's Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. But it's very rare that you see where, 3 or 4 of them have really strong games, which is essentially what you're saying when you're drafting 4, 5, 6 of them. So to me, I think that is a common build that you see out of the 1 hole that is a big mistake. So let's kind of talk through what some of the other builds are building. Looking here at the 6 hole, he starts out with 4 straight Lions. I like that. Building out here with 2 Bills. Don't mind that because, as I said, I'm not super high on trying to stack out too many of my Bills teams here. The 5 hole went Mahomes. He's got Kelsey. He's got Jefferson, Aaron Jones. So likely building for a Vikings and Chiefs both getting the 1 seed. So I would expect him to grab another Chief kind of late here. When you do that, again, tougher needle to thread to go just 5 straight, just because, again, you need 5 viable players. So I like him going Nakua and Terry McLaurin here. Let me do my team here. Going to grab Jaden Reed to go here. And then I'll probably go a little early just to make sure that I get him and go Bucky Irving. So let's go Reed and Irving here. Could have considered, obviously, Keon Coleman. Again, I'm okay with just these 3 Bills, or maybe, grabbing a Ty Johnson, a Knox in the 10th round, 9th, 10th round at that down there. I don't mind that, just because it's just unlikely that you're going to be getting too many usable weeks, too many scores that you're actually using those guys until likely the conference finals or the Super Bowl. Obviously, in this build, I am building around that being Green Bay or Tampa meeting the Bills in this build. So let's jump here into the 4 hole. He's got Eagles with Hurts, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And he's building around that to be a Chiefs with Xavier Worthy, Isaiah Pacheco, and Hollywood Brown. So again, I guess 2 days in a row of these streams where we're doing drafts, and I'm not seeing a dead build. We're looking at the 3 hole. He started out Eagles and then pivoted to Vikings. Obviously, probably wanted to get Hawkinson there at 46. I'd probably, he's going to be a very thin build. I'm not right now. I'm not sure the 3 hole with Dobie Dog's going to be able to field a Super Bowl team. It's only got 2 Vikings, and they're pretty thin with Hawkinson off the board already. And in the AFC teams, he's got Ladd McConkey. He probably should go. J.K. Dobbins here would make the most sense for him. Pickens, I think that's a mistake. So, kind of thin build for the 3 hole. So 3 hole is likely going to be a dead team. Pete, as you had asked about how many dead teams do I typically see. So I'm on the clock here. Probably will grab Romeo Doubs here to build out. So I'll grab Doubs here. And then I'm going to, let me see what we've got left here on the Bills. Ty Johnson could be interesting. I think that gives me a little bit of a more unique build. Yeah, I'll grab Ty Johnson here. And then in the 10th round, I would either grab a Buxo, McMillan, if he's there, or, Watson, Kraft type. Or if I needed a little differentiation, I could grab Dontavion Wicks on those builds. Give me something a little bit different. So again, not the most likely outcome, but I do, I think I'm higher on Green Bay than most. So this will be a Buffalo with Allen, James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Khalil Shakir. And then kind of two options with either Green Bay or Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl from the NFC side. Right now I have Mike Evans and Bucky Irving. Could consider Otten if I wanted to grab a third. If I grab a third buck, or kind of fill it out here with Josh Jacobs. I will Green Bay, which is probably what I will do. I think that Green Bay is more likely than Tampa to make the Super Bowl, so I'll probably build that team out a little bit. I've got Jacobs, Reed, and Romeo Doubs right now. Be happy to add Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft, any of these guys, probably the direction I will go. I think still got 4 picks away. So let's see how the Dobie Dog did. So Dobie went Darnold and Addison. Did not add another Viking. Maybe he'll throw Akers in here at the end, try to build that out, and then be looking for an NFC team. Where did he go? I hate how it sometimes just kind of switches you around here. He went Justin Herbert, so he took a second quarterback. Yeah, I mean he's a dead team. He can't field a Super Bowl. So Christian Watson went there, so I'm going to grab Tucker Kraft and be done with that stack. So overall, again, a clean run out for that board. Not the most likely Super Bowl, but certainly one that is live. And we will fire up another draft. I'm going to fire up one. That was a Gauntlet draft. I'm going to fire up one here in the Mitten. The Mitten 2, obviously, the first Mitten has filled. So we are 5 out of 6 out of this current draft. It has now just filled. So let me populate the windows for you guys, give you that clean look so you can follow along. And we will add it back to stage. So we are in the 5 hole here in this Mitten draft. And so again, we'll just kind of see, we'll see what the board presents to us. Might be a draft that we go and look at what 2 bye week teams potentially looks like, or maybe just 1 bye. We'll just kind of see what the board presents to us and go from there. That's generally how I like to approach it. So, I think if you're doing a lot of drafts, one of the things that I suggest is either creating a spreadsheet or coming into Underdog and kind of naming the teams. Kind of gives you a way of tracking the different combinations that you're drafting. I will say one caveat to that is that you can draft an identical team 4 times and get different results, based purely on pod luck on Underdog. However, personally, I like to diversify my portfolio, just different scenarios. But again, that's just a personal preference. So on the clock here in the 5 hole. Let's be a little different here, and let's grab Derrick Henry. And I'm going to grab Justin Jefferson here and try to build out a Baltimore, Minnesota build here. So as you see, the 4-hole here goes Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. And so this is a prime opportunity for someone to potentially kind of have that blocking, hate drafting mentality where they would go and grab Jared Goff, even though it is quite suboptimal to do that. I think people would argue that maybe it's not suboptimal because you're blocking someone from creating, a monster team, building a super team. To me, I'm not personally ever going to do that. I will observe what my 5 opponents are doing just so that I kind of know what the board is likely to look like as the rounds progress. But I'm not purposefully going out of my way to block teams. I'm more focused on building what I think is the most likely scenario. So hopefully, Shea here doesn't get greedy. He just goes Goff. So I will grab Aaron Jones here and try to build out this Minnesota stack. So the question here always is, do I want to grab Jordan Addison? And I will. Or do I want to grab Mark Andrews? Do I want to grab Sam Darnold? So to me, in terms of like the thought process of not hate drafting, to me, if I see somebody grab Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, and Jordan Addison, I'm not taking Sam Darnold because he doesn't have a stacking partner, even as a second quarterback on a Patrick Mahomes or a Jared Goff build. I would still want some type of stacking partner unless I'm building, a bye week scenario. So in the 4-hole, Shea Wheaton has started Gibbs, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Jared Goff, Sam Laporta. I do like this approach. Right now, I don't think a lot of teams are attacking it this way. So this is a build where Shea is basically saying, I don't think that Detroit gets the bye. Or in this particular build, they don't get the bye. So he's going to attempt to likely build out a very strong team for Detroit, where it's probably Detroit, Kansas City, where Detroit doesn't get the bye. And if Minnesota wins on Sunday, obviously Detroit doesn't get the bye, and this becomes a very difficult team to build. Because people won't be afraid to build this. I think kind of the common thought in the community right now is Detroit is going to get the bye, where it's really, honestly, it's a 50-50 toss-up. The game is in Minnesota against 2 really strong teams that I think played to just a few points last time. He's going full out Detroit here with 5 players. So I'm going to grab Sam Darnold here. I don't need to be greedy. The Patrick Mahomes guy does need a second quarterback. I don't want him sniping Darnold here and really ruining that draft. So for me here, have the opportunity to kind of see, do I want to build out a second NFC team here? And I certainly could. It would likely be reasonably thinner to do that. But let's try. Could have considered Bills players here with, Amari Cooper. That probably would have been the safer route to go Amari Cooper here and then have a higher likelihood of Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman coming back to me. But just not a route I decided to go. So the 1 seed here does grab 2 Bills to go along with Shakir, Cooper, Kincaid with Josh Allen. In his AFC, he's got Jamison Williams and Josh Jacobs. Probably wants to work on kind of filling out that NFC with some options. He's got Devonta Smith as well, but from, it's got 3 different NFC teams. So Hopkins would have been who I would have wanted to grab there. Didn't quite fall to me. So let's see how we fill out the rest of this build. I'm going to come here and grab Isaiah Likely. Kind of build out a little bit of Baltimore as a potential. No problem here on first round running back. Could consider Keon Coleman. I feel like that bridge passed, but yeah, I'll give that a try. I'll go for you with their copy paste. Copy paste suggested Keon Coleman. I don't mind that. I don't mind that shout. Probably a little thin there going Keon Coleman. Unlikely that Ty Johnson. I mean, I could go Davis here, but I don't know that I need a 4th running back. May grab another quarterback. That probably makes the most sense. And if Minnesota does get the bye, I'll be losing Jefferson and Addison in the first round of wide receivers. So probably want to grab a wide receiver here. Could give me a stronger week 1 score. I'm actually going to scroll all the way down here and grab Cortland Sutton. And then in the 10th, I will maybe see with maybe somebody who can get me that on the ground. Going to be an uncorrelated piece here. And we'll just grab Justin Herbert. Guy with some rushing upside in case I am leaning on him. So if Minnesota, a little thin on this build for me personally, if Minnesota does get the bye, losing Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Addison, and Sam Darnold, and Kareem Hunt. So kind of trying to thread a thin needle with Henry, which is a strong piece, Sutton, Coleman, Likely, and Herbert. So this is a build where if Minnesota does end up with the bye, probably a weak build, but obviously not dead. And we kind of talked through some of the other rosters. So I'm going to fire up one more here, and then we will call it a day. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to fire up another Mitten 2. And we are 3 of 6. Who ended up winning that Texas game? You know, anyone? I don't have a TV in this room. Who ended up winning that Texas game? Texas. Thank you, Kiss. I appreciate you. All right, so we are back with another Mitten. We have drawn the 2 on. Let me see. Do I understand correctly? You don't draft a squad that cannot field 5 players in the final. No, I do not draft a squad that cannot field 5 players in the final. I think no matter who the two teams that make the Super Bowl, obviously the most likely teams, again, are the 2-1 seeds. While those are the most difficult builds to advance out of the first round, again, the Gauntlet, the Mitten, these are 100,000 entrant contests. You are going to need a squad of at least 5 players. Now, if or 5 active players in the final. We'll grab Lamar here. If it ends up being the 2-1 seeds, whoever that may be, Kansas City and either Minnesota or Detroit, you can't have more than 5. I mean, I guess technically you could. It is possible, but it would be extremely unlikely. You're going to likely need 5 players. Potentially you could sneak by with 4 in order to potentially win the tournament, but you're likely going to need 5 in order to ship either of the tournaments. Even though the final in the Gauntlet is only 300 teams, several of those teams are going to have 5 players, even if it's 2-1 seeds. If it's not 2-1 seeds, if it's neither bye teams, so if it's like Baltimore and Green Bay, I think you're likely going to need 6, 7, maybe even 8 players to not be blocked out by other teams. So the 6 hole goes Mahomes, Jefferson. 3 hole goes Hurts, Brown. 5 hole Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Gibbs. Again, trying to build out that. It never makes any sense for the 2 hole here with Lamar Jackson to take James Cook. That is a big mistake. So not something I would ever advise doing. I'm going to go Green Bay here. Grab Josh Jacobs. Again, would expect the Josh Allen team to go James Cook and then an NFC player like with Jameson Williams or Aaron Jones. That makes the most sense. Or he could come down and grab Khalil Shakir, Devonta Smith. Again, a viable option, not one that I particularly like just because Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown are both off the board already. I feel that is likely a very thin line to take. Got my 1.5 touchdowns from Quinn and OT. Awesome. Thank you, Kiss. Appreciate you letting me know. And appreciate the 400 of you that are watching live with us today. Our friends over at Legendary Upside in the 4 hole. Not sure that actually is anyone from Legendary Upside. No badge. Go Barkley, Henry, Goff. So 3 different teams in the first 3 rounds. Kind of expected there when you go Barkley, Henry, and both of their quarterbacks are off the board already. Not a build that I would suggest starting with. You really narrow your options there. Jaybird here in the 5 hole starts 3 straight Lions. Be curious to see what he ends up doing with his AFC, how to fill out this build from him. Chris, what's going on? Thank you for stopping by. Just enjoying the new year, a little bummed. Obviously, quite a tragedy in New Orleans, but a little bummed I'm not going to get to watch my Bulldogs tonight. We'll tune into that tomorrow. But thoughts and prayers with those families affected in New Orleans. So me here on the clock. Again, I would not expect the 1 hole to take Mark Andrews. So if I want to go that direction, I can. I'm going to grab Jordan Addison here to potentially give myself a little bit of flexibility with my build out of Baltimore. He went Cooper Worthy. So I will take Mark Andrews here. Three hole here has gone Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and then given himself some options from the AFC with Khalil Shakir. Obviously, we know there's a lot of Bills you can take later in drafts, and then has gone Kelsey and Isaiah Pacheco. Four hole, he's also likely building around some Ravens. He's got Henry and Rashad Bateman to go along with Goff and Laporta. Be curious here if Legendary Upside comes and grabs David Montgomery in 2 picks at the 6-3 at pick 33. Would make sense for him to try to build out his team that way. So 6 hole here, Rogan Panthers. I really don't like this build with Mahomes and Darnold. It's very viable that both of those guys could earn the bye, and now you've taken 2 quarterbacks, and both could not be viable, and obviously just not a way that I like to build. 5 hole here, not really sure what he's doing in this build, but we will just kind of see how that shakes out for him. I think for me here, I'm going to go, how am I on running back? I'm going to go a little off the board here and grab Bucky Irving, just to give myself a little bit more options with the first round running back. Just try to secure a score in the first round. I'll come back and take TJ Hawkinson here. Again, kind of filling out that option with Minnesota. And why I'm doing that is I feel confident that I can take some Green Bay pieces later. Typically you see Josh Jacobs go in the first, somewhere between rounds 2 or 4, just kind of depending on the build. And then you'll see Jaden Reed, who at one point in the drafting season was, a 4th round pick pretty consistently. He's down to, the 7th, 8th round in a lot of drafts. So I do like being able to build around. I do like being able to build around that. 5 hole here. Copy paste says stinks. Yeah, I mean he could build out for a Detroit, LA. Yep, here you go. Yeah, he could build out for a Chargers, Lions, but pretty unlikely. Yeah. Buy the Kiss AI. Chris Al says buy the dip on the pack. I agree with that. I think they're a good offense to kind of grab some later pieces from. So the 3 stack here has started out Hurts, Brown, then went Shakir. He grabbed Goddard here, so he's got 3 Eagles. He's got 2 Chiefs. I probably would have preferred to see him grab. I probably would have preferred to see him grab Keon Coleman here instead of Goddard. Very unlikely that either. Maybe Goddard would have gone here from. Why not try? So that's probably a smart move on his part, since that really is his main bet, is Jalen Hurts. So Ben Weaver. I do respect that pick. I think that was the right way to go here in hindsight. I think on this build, because I've made the bet around Baltimore, I'm going to lean in here to Justice Hill in the Baltimore stack. Take a chance that Jaden Reed gets selected. Why not try? Really needs a running back. So on this build, we've got Baltimore. We have 3, 4 Ravens. We got 2. Let's build out the Green Bay piece. So we'll take Jaden Reed to go with Josh Jacobs. And then again, we will take one of these Packers here to close this out. So the 6 hole here, he's got Mahomes and Hunt, no other Chief. He's got Darnold and Jefferson and Aaron Jones. So he's got three. He's got three Vikings here. Yeah, I mean, I really don't like. I don't really like this build. He really needs another. I mean, he can't fill the Super Bowl team. The 6. So the 6 team here is dead. Can't fill 5 in the Super Bowl. 5 hole ended up going Detroit with 1, 2, 3, 4 Detroit pieces, three Detroit pieces, and then ended up building out this Charger stack. So not dead, but pretty thin. We got Goff, Laporta, Montgomery here to go along with Henry and Rashad Bateman and Likely. So built out that as a possibility. Even grabbed Tim Patrick there. Don't mind that build as well. Let's see. Essentially, that's all we're doing in these best ball, right? Trying to guess the right Super Bowl matchup. I mean, from a very high level, you could say that's what you will essentially need to win. Is your build will have to have to both teams that make the Super Bowl, but you're really trying to. It's not just identifying the 2 teams that make the Super Bowl. If that was the whole game, you would just take 5 players from each team. However, there's advancement strategy as well. Once you get to the second, and if you get out of the first round, the second round and the third round of playoffs, you are reseeded into pods of 10 with only 1 team advancing. So to me, like a 5-5 strategy is a really thin needle to try to thread, because you're essentially requiring 5 really strong scores out of just 2 teams for 3 straight weeks. And then obviously, if that miraculously happened and those teams made it to the Super Bowl, you're basically guaranteed to win with 10 players in the Super Bowl. So that is all for me today. I appreciate you joining in. In the description, I have got a link to a best ball strategy video I did last week. If you want to check that out, if you haven't already, it's down there in the description. Appreciate all of you tuning in today. I will be going live tomorrow and every day until the start of the NFL playoffs on the 11th, every day at 5 o'clock Eastern. So appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
1 week season.